Have you ever defended a politician like they were your best friend, or even cried after a celebrity breakup? Well, if you have, you might be in a parasocial relationship. These bonds basically resemble close relationships with a family or friend member, but they're only one-sided, and they're actually only between you and the celebrity or politician that you're in with. Hi, my name is Gracie Cervantes, and today I'm going to be talking about Beyond the Ballot, how parasocial bonds shape political reality. So unless you saw my presentation last year, you might be wondering, what is a parasocial relationship? Well, parasocial relationships, basically, as I said, are one-sided bonds between everyday people like you and me and celebrities, politicians, or even in some cases, fictional characters. So this would be crying when your favorite Friends actor dies, or maybe feeling like you really know Taylor Swift, even though you've only followed her on Instagram for 5 years. So what I found in previous research is that these relationships are not inherently bad. In fact, they can actually be useful for connecting, for entertaining, and for understanding, especially in times of loneliness and negligence. However, I've found in my research this year that they can have immense impacts on political reality. So for my research, I focused on parasocial relationships with three main groups of people: celebrities, politicians, and political fictional characters. So first, I'm going to talk about celebrities. So I found three major findings across my research. The first one being parasocial relationships with celebrities led to higher levels of political participation, but they rarely influence voter behavior. So basically, this just means that having parasocial relationships with celebrities would help people go out to the polls, but not necessarily affect what they put on their ballot. So going off of the second point, I found that when a person has a parasocial relationship with a celebrity and disagrees with them on a specific political issue, not always do they change their political behavior to fit those of the celebrity, but they actually have to manage this dissonance in other ways. For example, one way could be distancing themselves from the celebrity. So for example, if I have a parasocial relationship with Taylor Swift and she doesn't agree with me on the issue of environmentalism per se, I would not necessarily change my view about environmentalism, but I would distance myself from her, not consume as much media from her or as her songs, but I would just distance myself from her instead of changing my belief on environmentalism. Secondly, what I could do is minimize the issue and its importance to me. So for example, I could say, well, environmentalism isn't really that important to me. What's more close to my identity is my parasocial relationship with Taylor Swift and my thoughts on her. So the second group of people that I researched were politicians. And the first thing that I found was that the parasocial relationships with politicians increased political interest in individuals, basically just meaning that if you had a parasocial relationship with one, then you would be more interested in politics, which is obviously what the politician does. And so I bet many of you are familiar with this man here, Ronald Reagan. Something especially interesting that I found in my research was that many of the articles on parasocial relationships with politicians either focused on Donald Trump or Ronald Reagan, and the one thing that these two had in common were that they both had television shows before their political career, General Electric Theater and The Apprentice. So basically, these parasocial relationships that they had already built by being entertainers and on reality TV shows contributed greatly to their political career and also increased their support in their elections. So once people saw Donald Trump as being a very smart businessman, things like that, they would already trust him and relate to him, therefore he would have more support for them in politics. So the third and final group that I researched was political fictional characters. So if any of you have watched Madam Secretary or The Scandal, you know exactly who I'm talking about. So these are characters, usually women, who portray politicians, strong leaders, presidents, senators, things like that. And one finding that I had was that these political female characters increased political interest and engagement. So just like celebrities and real politicians, they made women especially more interested in politics and also more engaged in their voting and things like that. And going off of that, they also contributed to higher confidence levels, especially of women, in political participation. So basically, when someone like a woman saw herself in these fictional characters, then she would think that she can also participate and she can do the things that they can do in actual real-life politics. So parasocial relationships, even though they are one-sided bonds, can still be very influential for politics and shaping our political reality. So we need to be aware of how these effects of these relationships can have on us and understand how they work in political figures. Thank you so much for being a wonderful audience all evening. Here are my references, and have a wonderful night.